She offered him her hand, and he turned his back. What happened next made the entire financial world stop breathing. A billionaire's arrogance, a silent decision, and within seconds, $2 billion vanished. But this is not just about money. It is about power, respect, and a woman who walked away from it all, only to build something greater. Stay with this story, because the end will change how you see everything. The ballroom shimmered under the weight of chandeliers. Gold leaf walls echoed with laughter and clinking glasses. Champagne flowed like a lazy river through diamond-studded hands. Sasha Lynn stepped into the room, heels clicking like metronomes of precision. Her silk gown whispered with each stride, a deep red that caught every wandering eye. She had flown in from Singapore just hours before, straight from a 10-hour board meeting. But fatigue had no place in this moment. Tonight was about power and recognition. At the center of the room stood Reginald Creighton, oil tycoon, net worth $12 billion and rising. He held court like a modern Caesar, surrounded by men in tuxedos and women in armor disguised as couture. His laugh, too loud. His smile, too white. Sasha approached with quiet assurance. Her team trailed behind her, respectful, silent. She extended her hand. The room slowed. Every gaze drifted. This was the moment. Creighton looked at her hand. He hesitated, then scoffed, lips twitching with a smirk. He turned his back. His hand remained at his side. A beat passed. Then another. Sasha felt the air shift. The chandeliers no longer glittered. They glared. Her palm hovered midair. Cold now. The silence grew heavy, pressing against her chest. She withdrew her hand, slowly, deliberately. Her voice cut through the hush like a blade through silk. "Noted," she said. She reached into her clutch. One tap, then another. On the 7-inch screen glowed her banking app. $2.0 billion, marked for Creighton Future Energy. Her finger hovered for 1 second. Then she dragged left. Cancel. Confirm. Done. Gasps filled the air. Creighton turned, puzzled. Too late. Sasha looked him in the eye. No fury, only calm, colder than steel. She walked past him, each step an echo of finality. Behind her, murmurs exploded into chaos. Phones buzzed. His CFO went pale. Creighton tried to speak. Words fumbled, caught in his throat. But Sasha kept walking, through the doors, into the night air, where the wind, finally, felt warm again. The street was quiet, just the soft hum of a waiting black car. She slid inside. The driver looked up. "Back to the airport, Miss Lynn?" She nodded once, then paused. Actually, she looked out the window. The city's skyline shimmered under the moon, but it no longer held her interest. "Take me to the Westmorton," she said. The driver raised his brow slightly. "Yes, Miss Lynn." As the car pulled away, she leaned back into the leather seat. Her heart was steady, her breath calm, but her mind sparked. Images flashed, boardrooms, contracts, smiles with teeth behind them, and one handshake that never came. She opened her phone again. Notifications fluttered in, headlines already catching fire. Creighton snubs Lynn at gala. Sasha Lynn pulls $$ to be investment in real time. A billionaire's biggest mistake in 8 seconds. She smiled, not with joy, but with certainty. He had underestimated her. Many had, but none would forget her now. The car stopped in front of the Westmorton Hotel. It towered above the street, cloaked in glass and power. She stepped out. The doorman greeted her by name. Of course he did. Inside, the lobby glowed with understated wealth. Marble floors, quiet fountains, a scent of orchid and old money. She walked to the concierge. "I need the summit room. Now." "Yes, Miss Lynn. Shall I alert your team?" "No. Just bring up a bottle of that 1961 Margaux." The elevator opened like a whisper. She entered alone. 40 floors up, the doors parted. The summit room stretched before her, a wall of glass. And beyond it, the city lights below, blinking like nervous eyes. She walked to the center of the room, pulled out her phone, dialed a number. "Leon." A pause. Then a voice. "Yes, Sasha." Activate Plan Cobalt. Silence on the line. Then, are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything. The call ended. She stood still, let the quiet wrap around her. The wind tapped gently at the windows, like the city itself was curious, nervous. Minutes passed. Then her phone buzzed again. A secure message. Encrypted. Cobalt initiated. 5 holdings divested. Media prepared. She poured herself a glass of wine. The Margot breathed in her crystal stemware. She sipped. It was perfect. Meanwhile, across the city, Creighton paced. His penthouse office once felt like a throne. Now it was a cell. His assistant burst in. "Sir, the board is on the line. They are not calm." He barked, "I will handle it." But he knew he wouldn't. Couldn't. Because Sasha Lynn had just ripped the foundation from under him, and she had not even raised her voice. He sat down, turned on the screen. News anchors spoke with wide eyes. Experts speculated. Creighton's aggressive acquisition model may not survive this. Lynn's influence stretches far beyond her investments. Wall Street is watching, and so is the world. He stared at the glass in his hand. His bourbon suddenly tasted cheap. Back at the Westmorton, Sasha's team began to arrive. Quiet knocks, sharp suits, focused eyes. They knew. No one asked what happened. Only, what is next? She pointed to the screen on the wall. Global market maps. Lines in red and green. She tapped one region. We double down in Berlin. Shift our energy assets out of Texas. Focus on renewables. Back Montreux entirely. Full acquisition. A murmur. Then nods. "And Creighton?" someone asked. She tilted her head slightly. Let the silence answer. Her wine glass clicked gently on the table. Then she said, "He wanted to feel untouchable. Let him feel invisible instead." At that moment, her phone buzzed again. Private message. Unknown number. "This is Reginald Creighton. We need to talk." She stared at it. Unread. Unimpressed. Deleted. Across the country, dominoes began to fall. Banks reviewed partnerships. Law firms revised their allegiances. Even politicians, once eager for photo ops, suddenly remembered prior engagements. Creighton's empire was not crumbling. It was collapsing. All because of one decision. 1 second. One hand he refused to shake. And Sasha? She watched it all unfold with surgical detachment. She had not set the fire. Only removed the extinguisher. Another hour passed. She changed. Black suit. Hair pulled back. She looked at herself in the mirror. This was not revenge. It was realignment. Correction. Her team gathered once more. A plane awaited. Geneva next. Then Dubai. Then Mumbai. But tonight, she would sleep, knowing that respect was no longer a request. It was a requirement. She turned off the lights. The summit room fell into darkness. Only the city still glowed, buzzing with stories, and one in particular that would echo for years. Billionaire refused to shake her hand. Seconds later, she withdrew $2 billion in support. It was not a scandal. It was a message, and the world had just received it. The morning sun broke through the skyline. Soft golden light spilled across the city like a silent tide. In the summit room, it touched the edges of a now empty wine glass, and then it reached her face. Sasha opened her eyes. She had slept only 4 hours, but that was enough. Her mind was already in motion, not anxious, just clear, like a hawk circling in silence. She dressed with precision. Charcoal gray, clean lines, subtle strength. A small platinum pin glinted on her lapel, her family's crest. A symbol older than any of Creighton's empires. Downstairs, her team waited. No chatter, only the hum of purpose. She nodded once. The message was clear. Let's move. The car pulled away from the hotel, cutting through morning traffic like a scalpel. Outside, the city was waking. Inside, Sasha's next play had already begun. On the way to the airstrip, she received 3 messages. One from the Swiss consortium, asking for a private meeting in Geneva. One from the Asian Development Council, requesting her presence on the green energy panel. and one from Creighton's communications team. Mr. Creighton would appreciate the opportunity to make amends in private. She deleted the third without reading further. She looked out the window. The sky above was cloudless. Wide open, her jet waited on the tarmac, like a blade poised for flight. Sleek, silent, deadly efficient. As she boarded, her chief strategist approached. A man named Imani. Sharp-eyed, rarely spoke unless it mattered. He handed her a tablet. Fallout is widening, he said. Creighton's stock dropped 14% overnight. His largest partner? She asked. Gonan Energy, based in Tel Aviv. They are now nervous. She took the tablet. Swiped once. Twice. She saw the numbers. Red. Bleeding. She paused. Then, offered Gonan a stabilizing package. 48 hours to accept. Otherwise, we back their competitor. Imani nodded. No questions. Only momentum. The engines roared. She barely noticed. Her mind was already in Europe. In Geneva, the summit center stood like a fortress of glass and steel. Diplomats, executives, billionaires, and barons of every industry passed through its gates. But all eyes turned as Sasha Lin entered. She did not seek attention. It followed her. Her name was now whispered with respect, and a hint of fear. Inside the chamber, she met the Swiss consortium. They offered coffee. She declined. Let's begin, she said. And they did. She moved through the room with surgical precision, cutting through hesitation, exposing weakness, redefining terms. By noon, they had doubled their proposed investment. By 1, they had ceded majority voting rights to her firm. By 2, they were asking if she would consider joining the European Sovereign Energy Council. She left them with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Outside, snow had begun to fall. Soft, white, deceptively gentle. A black car waited. Another plane. Dubai next. On the way, she checked the news again. Creighton Energy faces internal revolt. Anonymous sources reveal lavish spending, poor ethics. Lin's withdrawal unleashes corporate earthquake. Her face appeared beneath the headlines. Always the same shot. The moment after he turned his back. The moment she withdrew her hand. But they did not capture her eyes. The eyes that saw everything shift. In Dubai, the skyline was hot and unreal. Glass towers shimmered like mirages in the desert. She met with a venture group focused on desalination tech. They had waited months for a meeting. Now they had 30 minutes. She listened. She asked one question. Who owns the lithium rights beneath your site? They hesitated. She stood. Come back when you know. The next day they returned. They had bought the rights. She smiled. Now we talk. She moved like a storm. Not loud, but undeniable. In Mumbai, she addressed an energy conference. Her keynote was 12 minutes. No notes, no slides, just her voice. Measured, clear, unshakable. The world is not powered by oil or wind, she said. It is powered by attention, by trust, and by consequences. Applause was not immediate. It rolled in like thunder. Later, in her hotel suite, her assistant brought her tea. White jasmine. Delicate. How long are we staying? Sasha looked up from the window. Not long. Next week, we target the Seoul markets. And Creighton? She paused. Looked down at her phone. A new headline. Creighton steps down amidst crisis. His face was gray. Eyes hollow. The weight of hubris made visible. She said nothing. Only clicked the screen off. In her mind, she returned to that ballroom. The chandeliers. The laughter. The moment. His refusal. Her choice. 1 second of ego. 2 billion gone. But it was never about the money. It was about the hand he refused to shake. And the lesson he refused to learn. She stood. Walked to her desk. A new file sat there. A company in Norway. Hydrogen power. Unclaimed. Untouched. Full of promise. She opened it. And the world began to shift again. Sasha scanned the Norwegian report in silence. Cold numbers. Colder opportunity. The company was small. Privately owned. Still unknown to global markets. But its patents? They were revolutionary. Solid-state hydrogen cells, minimal waste, max output, buried in bureaucratic ice, waiting for a thaw, and she would be the sun. She scribbled a note on her tablet. Secure exclusive rights before the quarter ends. Her assistant, Theo, entered. He was 26, fast, loyal, and tireless. The Norwegian minister is open to a meeting, he said. Tomorrow, 6:30 a.m. their time. She nodded. Confirm it. I will speak to him myself. He hesitated. There's one thing. She looked up, always direct. Creighton's PR firm is launching a campaign, he said, trying to spin the fallout. Position him as a visionary betrayed by political overreach. She did not blink. They will fail. Theo shifted. There's also an op-ed in the Tribune, accusing you of corporate sabotage. She smiled. A small, sharp thing. Let them write their fiction, she said. I will write the future. She turned back to her desk, marked a memo. Prepare statement on Norway partnership. Green future. Accountability. Precision. Asterisk, asterisk. That evening, she flew to Oslo. The skies darkened early. The airport was hushed under sheets of snow. Her car swept her through narrow streets and glass towers. She did not sightsee. She observed. A culture of efficiency, stability, innovation buried under modesty. Perfect. By morning, she sat across from Minister Halvorsen, a serious man, beard like steel wool, eyes like glaciers. She spoke first. I am not here to buy you. I am here to invest in what you already are. He listened. A pause. Then, and what do you believe we are? She answered without hesitation. Quiet leaders. Builders of a blueprint the world has not yet seen. I want to amplify, not overwrite. Halvorsen leaned back, his fingers steepled. The patents are sensitive. National pride is involved. She nodded. I do not take ownership. I take partnership. You keep the soul. I provide the spine. A silence settled. Then he smiled. A rare, cautious smile. Then let us discuss terms. By noon, she had locked in a 40-year collaboration, exclusive development, shared revenue, green light on immediate testing. As she walked out into the Oslo wind, it cut across her face like a blade. She welcomed it. The cold reminded her she was alive. Focused. In the car, Theo handed her another tablet. More news. Creighton's resignation sparks corporate exodus. Lin's influence reshapes global energy map. Will there ever be another Sasha Lin? She scrolled past them. They were noise. But one message caught her eye. Private. From a name she had not seen in years. E. Nakamura, her former mentor. The only one she had ever feared disappointing. She opened it. Impressive moves. But remember, momentum without direction is just a storm. She stared at the words. Then typed, I am the storm. And the map. She powered off the screen. Back in Dubai, Creighton sat in silence. His office had been cleared out, his name scraped off the marble plaque. He watched the interview with Sasha again. Her words, her gaze, that stillness. He poured another drink, but it did not warm him. His empire had crumbled with a whisper, and she had not even raised her voice. His phone buzzed. His former CFO. Another crisis. Another headline. He turned the phone off. He had nothing left to say. In Seoul, Sasha arrived for the Green Tech Summit. Crowds surged around her. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. She walked with calm precision. Bodyguards flanked her. But it was her silence that cleared the path. Inside, she unveiled the Norway Initiative, a 10-year plan. Affordable hydrogen for emerging nations. They called it bold, unprecedented, impossible. She called it overdue. A young journalist asked, What drives you? She paused, then answered, disrespect, followed by clarity, and now impact. The room fell silent. That kind of silence only truth can create. She left the stage. One more summit done, 1,000 more ahead. In her suite, Theo handed her a box. Simple, unmarked, inside a watch. Old, elegant, a note. You always knew what time it was, long before the rest of us. Yen. She held it for a moment. Time. She thought back to the moment it had all shifted. That ballroom. That turn back. That unshaken hand. And then, her choice. She slid the watch on her wrist. The gears moved. So, did she. Out the window, Seoul shimmered. A city in motion. Like her. But behind that light, the world waited. Watched. Whispered her name. And she was not finished yet. In Zurich, a rival prepared a counter-strategy. In Lagos, an environmental coalition begged for her backing. In Buenos Aires, a senator quoted her in parliament. Sasha Lin was no longer just a name. She was a movement, a redefinition, and she was still moving, because respect once demanded must be defended, daily, with grace, with power, with vision sharper than steel. She picked up the next file. Iceland, geothermal. Her eyes narrowed, then widened. The future was glowing beneath the ice, and she was already on her way. The dossier on Iceland felt warm in her hands, despite its frosty origin. She flipped through charts, patents, heat maps. A country built on fire beneath ice. Volcanic energy. Stable grid. Minimal corruption. Maximum potential. She stood by the window, watching the first signs of dust blur Seoul's skyline. The weight of the city felt distant. Her mind was already north, where tectonic plates whispered promises through stone. Theo entered with a quiet knock. Flights are confirmed. Reykjavik by sunrise. She nodded. Set meetings with the Ministry of Industries, and find out who controls the Thorsmork field rights. He blinked. They're not even on the market. They will be, she said. And they would, because the moment she focused, the world shifted. 16 hours later, she stood in Icelandic wind. It howled like a forgotten god. Raw, clean. She breathed it in. Her lungs burned, but she smiled. In Reykjavik, the officials were hesitant, polite but guarded, accustomed to being overlooked, not pursued. Sasha changed that. With precision, with reverence, with data, she presented a plan. Sustainable, profitable, respectful, not conquest, co-creation. She mapped out a geothermal future that balanced investment with sovereignty, a model no one had offered them before. They listened, carefully, then began to lean forward. One minister whispered to another, "She does not come to take. She comes to build." That evening, over a modest dinner of Arctic char and barley, she sealed a deal in principle. Shared ownership, local employment guarantees, global scale. The next morning, the headlines were small, but the ripples were enormous. Lin eyes geothermal leap in the north. Global energy chessboard reordered again. Creighton's silence grows deafening. Back in New York, Wall Street analysts argued over her next move. Some claimed she was overextending. Others called it genius. She did not read them. She was already in Lagos. Dust swirled in the heat. The city pulsed with contradictions. Rich and raw. Growing and aching. She visited the Makoko district quietly. No cameras. No PR. Just her. She sat with women who powered solar co-ops from rooftops of tin. Listened to engineers whose tools were handmade, but whose ideas could change a continent. She offered funding. No conditions. Only collaboration. She offered scale, but left control in their hands. They did not cheer. They nodded. They understood her language. She left Lagos with 50 new partners, and a promise to return. In the air, she reviewed the messages. One stood out, a private message, from a woman named Mireille Toussaint, CEO of a French energy giant, once a competitor, now intrigued. "We have resisted change, but I suspect you are not offering it. You are becoming it. Let us meet." Sasha replied with 2 words. Geneva, Thursday. The calendar filled. The map of her empire redrew itself daily. Lines turned into connections, borders into bridges. And yet, every night, she returned to the same image. That moment, that snub, his face, his back, the room that held its breath. Not because of anger, but because it reminded her that nothing was promised. Not respect, not equality, not a seat at the table. You had to build the table, brick by brick, from ice and fire, from silence and thunder. In Buenos Aires, she met with a senator. They walked along the river. No guards, just ideas. The senator asked, "Do you ever feel tired fighting?" Sasha replied, "It is not a fight if you are building something." That night, she gave a lecture at the University of Buenos Aires. 1,000 students filled the hall. Hundreds more stood outside. She spoke of opportunity, of discipline, of the power in being underestimated. "Let them look away," she said. "Let them laugh. Then let them watch you build a world they no longer recognize." Applause echoed into the city. And beyond, in Paris, she finally met Toussaint, a woman of elegance and pride. Older, still sharp, they dined overlooking the Seine. No small talk, only questions. "What do you want?" Toussaint asked. Sasha answered with clarity. Resilience, autonomy, a world that stops asking permission to exist. Toussaint raised her glass. To the future, they clinked. Alliances shifted. Back in Dubai, a boardroom watched satellite data. Her influence could now be tracked in megawatts, in market fluctuations, in job creation, in silence from her enemies, because those who once spoke against her now only watched. Careful, cautious, she had become more than a name, more than a brand. She was a climate, a condition. Back in Oslo, a child pointed to a magazine with her on the cover. His mother smiled. "That is the woman who made the volcano power our schools." In Lagos, solar arrays carried her logo, but more importantly, her philosophy. Shared power, shared gain. In Seoul, a professor taught her speech as modern political philosophy. In Geneva, her name was etched on a new energy charter. Creighton watched from the shadows of a minor news site. No one interviewed him anymore. He was a cautionary tale, a whisper, the man who turned away. And she kept moving. Because Sasha Lin did not wait for doors. She built cities. She did not wait for respect. She demanded equity and delivered impact. Wherever she went, things grew, shifted, rose. And in the space where once a handshake was refused, now stood an empire, built from steel, silence, and precision. And the world was only beginning to understand her reach. In the quiet of early morning, high above the Mediterranean, Sasha sat alone in the glass-wall lounge of her newest development, Athena 1, a wind-powered research and tech hub carved into the cliffs of Santorini. White walls, blue sea, and a silence broken only by gulls and distant waves. It was not for rest. It was for planning. Every morning before meetings, calls, flights, she sat alone for exactly 30 minutes. No phone, no assistant, only thought. She reviewed the map in her head. Dots of light, each one a partnership. A lab, a village electrified, a dam restructured, a pipeline halted. She could see the shape of it now. Not just a network, not just an empire, a legacy. Athena 1 had been built in under a year, faster than any of the skeptics predicted. Powered by wind, cooled by seawater, run by local engineers. It was proof that speed and ethics could coexist. Her team called it the lighthouse, a beacon of what was possible. At 6:31 a.m., her watch buzzed softly. Theo entered, holding her first report. He knew not to speak until she stood. She took the file. "Go ahead," she said. "Latin America is stabilizing. El Salvador Solar Initiative is ahead of schedule. The Andes water turbines hit 87% efficiency. The Climate Council in Jakarta confirmed your keynote slot." She nodded, pushed the turbine data to the Nairobi lab. "I want them to test that pressure model in arid conditions." "There's more." Theo hesitated. "Creighton," he said. She did not flinch. "He's resurfacing. A podcast. Title The Hand I Never Shook." Her eyebrow lifted slightly. Not anger, not amusement. Curiosity. He says it was a misunderstood moment, that he's learned, wants to talk. She walked to the edge of the glass. The Aegean spread endlessly below. She could almost hear the ocean breathing. "No reply," she said. "He's free to speak, but my time belongs elsewhere." She turned. Theo followed her back to the conference room. The day unfolded. A call with the Prime Minister of Canada. An ethics review with the AI Audit Board. A review of marine-safe turbines for the South China Sea. Each conversation built upon the last. Each piece locked into the larger design. By mid-afternoon, she was on a flight again. Destination, Nairobi. She slept for 2 hours. Then rose, reviewed documents, answered encrypted messages from 3 continents. In Nairobi, the welcome was warm. She shook hands with engineers, officials, students. And she made sure every photographer caught it, because that gesture still mattered. At the lab, she examined prototypes built with recycled minerals, portable, modular batteries for rural grids. One engineer, barely 22, demonstrated a prototype that recharged in under 3 minutes. Sasha watched and smiled. "Name your lab. Choose your team. I will fund it myself." The young woman blinked. "Why?" "Because I needed someone like you when I started," she said. That night, headlines poured in. Lynn funds East Africa's first women-led grid tech lab. From silence to spotlight, a different kind of power. Creighton's podcast dropped the same night. A long monologue. Soft regrets. Glossed over history. Sasha did not respond. She did not need to, because the world already had. Social media lit up. Quotes for his episode juxtaposed with images of her on rooftops, in fields, with welders, students, and presidents. A journalist wrote, asterisk, "While Creighton speaks of lost moments, Sasha Lynn is too busy creating them." Asterisk, "In Singapore, children studied her energy models in school. In Greenland, one of her wind farms now lit a fishing village for the first time in winter. In northern India, women gathered in a temple now powered by a solar grid she helped design. One held a candle and whispered, 'She is not a light. She is the one who taught us how to build it.' By now, she barely noticed the whispers of the past. She was far ahead. In New Zealand, she helped reforest a mountainside one strip for coal. In Morocco, she financed the first net-positive hospital in the region. Even in the Arctic, she sent researchers to build ice-resilient power systems. No region too far. No climate too extreme. No legacy too broken to rebuild. Her name became not just a force. It became a verb. To Sasha, something meant to elevate, to dismantle gently, to build better. A dictionary in Brazil added under social verbs. Children wrote it in notebooks. Across campuses in Europe, students carried her biography as required reading. At a ceremony in Ghana, a woman named Ajoa presented a poem. Asterisk, she walked into silent / and left behind light. Asterisk, by then, Sasha had started to fade from public view, not in defeat, in evolution. She spent more time in forests, farms, labs, less on stages, more listening, less commanding, but her effect only grew, because she had made space for others, for new voices, and the systems she built were designed not to depend on her. They were designed to outlast her. Legacy without ego, power without possession. Years passed, and still the world remembered. Not just the days she pulled out $2 billion, but the days and years she poured billions into forgotten futures. And always, quietly beneath it all, the simple truth remained. It all began with a moment, one room, one hand refused, one step taken, away, and into everything. In the coastal town of Lofoten, Norway, the waves struck the rocks with ancient rhythm. Fishermen hauled their nets as they had for centuries, unaware that beneath their shores, a network of underwater turbines pulsed with silent power. They bore a single emblem, an abstract hand, reaching not for dominance but for balance. The Sasha Lynn Foundation. Sasha herself stood quietly on a nearby cliff, wrapped in a wool coat, hair caught in the wind. She watched the turbines break current and generate light for thousands. A local boy approached her, hesitant. "Are you the woman from the books?" She smiled. "What do the books say?" He looked down, then back up. That you changed everything. That you made the world softer and stronger. She crouched to meet his eyes. I did not change the world. I listened to it, and it changed me. He ran off, laughing in the cold. Behind her, Theo stepped forward. Meeting in Copenhagen is set. The blue hydrogen panel. Then Jordan for the desert agriculture pilot. She nodded. And the Tokyo grant? Approved. Their robotics division is naming the new AI grid monitor after you. She raised an eyebrow. That is unnecessary. Theo smiled. They say it is not a name. It is a direction. She paused, looked back at the waves, then spoke. We are not done. We are only just finding our stride. The next month, Sasha arrived in Jordan. The Wadi Rum desert stretched wide and rust-colored beneath the sun. Once bone-dry, this land now hosted her newest miracle, a solar farm the size of a city. Paired with vertical gardens, water-reclaimed tech, and AI-seeded irrigation, green rose from red. Shade fell where once only heat did. Children played under trees their parents never thought they would see. She walked with Dr. Lena Faruqi, head of the project, a botanist with soil-stained fingers and star-bright vision. You made this possible, Lena said. No, Sasha replied. You did. I just knew when to listen. At sunset, they stood together on a ridge. Below, miles of solar panels shimmered, like a mirror catching the last light of day. Lena pointed. See that tower? That is where the satellite uplink is. We are sending our research data to Nairobi, to the lab your funding built. Sasha watched the tower blink in the distance. The idea of connection had become tangible, a thread through countries, communities, continents, from Iceland to Indonesia, Chile to Cameroon. Circuits of hope and discipline powered the present. In the coming weeks, she would speak at no conferences. She would attend no galas. She had stopped appearing on magazine covers, not from retreat, from completion, because the work had surpassed her name. It was being carried forward by minds she had once taught, and now simply trusted. One evening in Kyoto, she was invited to a quiet garden by a monk, a friend of her late mentor, E. Nakamura. Over matcha, the monk said, You once said you were the storm and the map. Where are you now? Sasha looked at the falling cherry blossoms, thought carefully, then answered, I am the road, not always seen, but felt beneath every step. In Nairobi that same week, the engineer she had once mentored unveiled a modular grid system. She named it LINX. It ran on hybrid solar hydrogen power and used predictive AI to reroute energy during outages. When asked why she named it after Sasha, she replied, Because she taught me that the future is not something we wait for. It is something we wire, design, and deliver. In the years that followed, entire economies rebuilt themselves on the blueprint Sasha had left behind. Disaster zones became test beds for resilient power. Isolated islands turned into hubs of renewable tourism. Refugee camps became cities with data infrastructure and microgrids. At global summits, her name became synonymous with four things: speed, stability, sustainability, and silence, because she had shown the world that the loudest voice is not always the one speaking. It is the one building. Back in Santorini, years later, she returned to Athena 1. A new generation ran it now. She visited only as an observer. She walked the halls without guards, stopped to speak with interns, watched teams reviewing satellite climate data and water cycle reports. She was greeted not with awe, but with warmth, familiarity, trust. One evening, she stood again at the cliff's edge, this time with Theo beside her, older now, but still sharp-eyed. He held out a tablet. Latest numbers from the Arctic grid. She waved it away gently. Later, tonight, I just want to listen. They stood in silence, the wind tangling her hair, the turbines turning like quiet sentinels in the distance. He finally asked, Do you think he ever understood? She knew what he meant. Creighton, the man who once refused her hand. She thought for a moment. I think he saw a moment, she said, but he never saw the future standing in front of him. Theo nodded. The sky above them deepened into indigo. A few stars blinked through. He looked at her. Would you change anything? She smiled softly. Only this. I would have walked away even faster. Below, the sea sang its ageless song. And around the world, lights flickered on in places that had once known only dark. Each one, a spark, that carried her name, not as a monument, but as a method. And in the quiet, beneath stars and silence, Sasha Lynn closed her eyes, not because her work was done, but because she had shown the world how to continue, even without her. And they were. The night deepened around Athena 1. Waves shimmered with moonlight, brushing against the shore like whispered applause. Inside, the research hub pulsed gently, lights dim but never off. The world no longer slept completely. It hummed softly, always moving forward. Sasha walked slowly down the corridor lined with glass and green. Vines climbed along clean white walls, living proof that steel and nature could coexist. Students passed her with quiet nods. They knew who she was. But more importantly, they knew why she mattered, not for what she had built, but for what she had unlocked. At the far end of the corridor, an elevator waited. She took it to the observation deck. Above, the dome revealed the stars. Not through satellite, but real starlight. Unfiltered. She stood alone beneath them, as she had so many nights before. But this time, she felt something rare. Stillness. True stillness. A quiet not of absence, but of completion. Behind her, the door slid open. Imani stepped in. No longer her strategist. Now the executive director of the Lynn Global Futures Institute. They had not seen each other in person in over a year, but no words were needed. He walked up beside her, folded his hands behind his back. Finally, he said, "Do you know what they're calling this generation now?" She turned slightly. "Which generation?" "The one born after you pulled out of Creating Energy." He smiled. "They call themselves the Handless Generation." Sasha laughed, low and real. "Dramatic? Maybe, but their symbol is not a fist. It's not even a handshake. It's a palm, open, ready to build." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "They deserve better myths than mine." "They already have them," Imani said. "They just do not realize who wrote them." She walked to the edge of the glass. Below, the sea turbines turned gently, catching the moonlight in their blades. Above, a single comet streaked across the sky. "The galaxy will outlast us," she said. "But if it remembers us, let it remember that we made light without taking more than we gave." Imani placed something in her hand, a small disk, embedded with nano storage in a glowing seal. "It's ready," he said. "The full archive. All your notes, plans, letters. Every deal, every speech, every decision." She held it between two fingers. So small, yet inside a world. "Send it to the Mars expedition team," she said. "Let them see where it began." He blinked. "You're serious?" She nodded. "If we are going to other worlds, we should go with humility, with memory, and with models that do not break the ones who build them." Imani took the disk back. "I'll transmit it tomorrow. Encrypted, logged, sealed." Sasha turned back to the stars. They blinked with quiet indifference. And still, she felt at peace. She stayed on the observation deck until dawn. Watched the sky turn lavender, then gold. Watched the turbine spin. Watched the lights of Athena 1 blink out, then come back on as solar feeds activated. The world was still turning, and it no longer needed her to push it. That morning, she walked down to the courtyard. A group of young leaders, 20, maybe 25, waited to meet her. Finalists of the Lynn Emerging Innovators cohort. From Bhutan, Peru, Syria, Alaska, Namibia, Fiji. They stood in a semicircle, notebooks ready, eyes wide. Sasha sat with them, cross-legged on the stone. No stage, no microphone. "You have 1 hour," she said. "No speeches, just questions." The first one asked, "How did you know where to begin?" "I didn't," she answered. "I just knew what I would not repeat." Another asked, "How do you keep from burning out?" "I did burn out, but I turned the ashes into bricks." And another, what was your biggest failure? She looked down for a moment, then met their gaze, thinking the world would change without resistance. They wrote furiously, but some just listened. One young woman from Jakarta looked up. Do you think we can continue what you started? Sasha smiled. Do not continue what I started. Surpass it. Forget my name if you must. But never forget that every system was built by people, which means it can be unbuilt, rewritten, and remade. She stood, brushed stone dust from her coat. I am just a path, she said. You are the footsteps. The students rose. The moment held, then released. Later that day, she boarded a ship. No staff, no press, just her, a captain, and an icebreaker heading toward Antarctica. She had been invited to observe the continent's first off-grid energy colony, built using principles she helped define, run entirely by the next generation. She would not lead it. She would witness it, as a guest, as she stared out across the ice. She reflected not on the power she had held, but on the responsibility she had carried. She had reshaped nations, but more importantly, she had reshaped the question of how we power, how we govern, how we lead. The world was full of names. Many would be forgotten, but her principles, they had taken root. In the soil, in code, in water, in wind. She walked out onto the deck, closed her eyes, felt the cold air bite her skin. Then she smiled, because for the first time, she was not carrying the future. It was carrying itself. And it was light. The ship sliced through the Southern Ocean, ice cracking softly against its hull. The air was clean, so clean it hurt to breathe. The kind of air that reminded you of your place in the universe. Sasha stood at the prow, alone with the cold, wrapped in a dark thermal coat, with scarf coiled like armor, gloves stitched with solar threads that warmed her fingers silently. Ahead, the first outlines of the colony came into view. White domes arranged like constellations against the endless ice. Silver wind turbines spun in slow, deliberate rhythm. Not a wire visible, not a drop of diesel. Self-sustaining, net positive, human-powered. The colony, called Horizon Point, was a prototype, not for survival, but for balance, a test of civilization in its most honest form. What do we build when we can build anything? As she stepped off the ship, boots crunching on frost, a young man approached, dark hair, bronze skin, eyes sharpened by years of cold data and colder winds. Director Lin, he said, offering a hand. She shook it, firm, warm, no hesitation. I'm Elias Mensa, lead systems engineer. We've been following your model since year one. Sasha looked around. The sun hung low in the sky, never setting, only circling. Shadowless time. A place where truth had nowhere to hide. How long has Horizon Point been off-grid? 17 months, Elias replied. For storms. Zero downtime. We recycle 98% of all resources. The rest gets composted or upcycled into infrastructure. She nodded. Failures. Plenty. But we stopped fearing them. We started asking better questions instead. He led her through the domes. Living quarters built into the ice. Labs embedded with algae walls. A greenhouse powered by kinetic flooring. Children ran barefoot on mats that turned their laughter into watts. In one dome, elders wove clothing from hemp silk, sensors embedded in the threads. In another, teenagers coded energy protocols in a shared language designed by refugees from 5 continents. Everything pulsed with a sense of origin, of mutual purpose, of earned peace. Inside the control center, Sasha met the colony's council. No one wore a tie. No one deferred to age or title. They sat in a circle, not as leaders, as listeners. They asked Sasha for nothing, not approval, not advice, only presence. She gave it, and for hours said little, just watched, listened, learned. Later, as snow fell soft as ash across the domes, she stood on a platform facing the sea. Elias joined her. Do you recognize it? He asked. She turned to him. Recognize what? What you've done. She was quiet for a long time, then said, No, Because it is not mine anymore. It never really was. He smiled. We still carry your principles. Every new system. We start with your 4 questions. She looked at him now, curious. You remember them? He recited them, as if rehearsed since childhood. Does it leave the world better than we found it? Does it share power instead of hoarding it? Does it repair what was broken, not just replace it? And does it remember who was left behind last time? Sasha exhaled. Wind swept strands of hair from her face. I wrote those in a hotel lobby in Jakarta. On a napkin. Well, Elias said, your napkin built a civilization. The next day, Sasha joined the team in a research dive. They descended into ice tunnels glowing with bioluminescent algae. Below, the colony's thermal core captured energy from deep water vents. Not extraction, not conquest, just harmony. In her diving suit, she floated for a while, feeling her heartbeat echo in the quiet. It was the sound of life, not ambition, not legacy, just life. Back above, as she changed out her suit, Theo's voice crackled through her satellite comms. Sasha, I know you said no business today, but there's something I thought you'd want to hear. She tapped her earpiece. Go on. There's a vote passing through the Global Governance Council. Unanimous so far. They want to rename the Renewable Mandate. They're calling it the Lynn Accord. She closed her eyes. Let the moment settle. Tell them no. Theo blinked, though she could not see it. No. Call it the Accord of Many, she said. It was never just mine. It was built by thousands. Let the name reflect that. Silence. Then Theo chuckled. Only you would say no to your own century-defining policy name. It is not about names. It never was. It is about permanence. That night, she dined with the colony. Simple food. Lentils. Bread. Salt-cured fish. Clean water. No gold. No title cards. Just people. At the end, a child asked her to tell a story. Not of the world she had changed, but of when she was young. Sasha thought for a moment, then said, I was once refused a handshake, and in that second, I understood the full cost of being underestimated. The room stilled, but her voice remained calm. I do not hate the man who turned away. I thank him, because when someone tries to make you small, you have a choice. You can shrink, or you can expand so wide they can never ignore you again. The child asked, did he ever say sorry? She smiled. No, but I stopped needing him to. The wind outside howled gently, like the breath of the planet itself. In her quarters at night, she wrote one final journal entry. She addressed it not to herself, not to Theo, not to the world, but to the next unknown hand, the one not yet born. And it read, Asterisk, you'll inherit fire and shadow. Use both. Build slowly. Lead with quiet. Let your work outlive your name. And when they turn their backs, offer your hand anyway. Not for them, but because the world deserves a different ending. Asterisk. Then she set down her pen, and for the first time in decades, she rested, not to recover, but because the future had learned how to walk. The morning came soft and silver. Clouds drifted low over Horizon Point, casting long shadows across the ice. Sasha woke to silence. Not the forced kind of silence she once found in hotel suites or boardrooms, but a true stillness, a quiet born from balance. Nothing begged for her attention. No crisis knocking. No empire trembling. She brewed tea herself. No aides. No assistants. Just leaves and water and time. Each sip was unhurried. Outside her window, snow foxes traced tiny prints in the frost. Solar panels adjusted slightly with the sun's arc, always following light. Today, there would be no meetings, no interviews, no legacy planning, just observation and being. She bundled up in her parka and stepped outside. Elias was already at the outer dome, welding something beside a young girl, Anya, from Kazakhstan. The two worked in sync. No commands, only rhythm. Sasha walked slowly toward the sea. Her boots sank into the snow with each step. Above her, the sky widened, an infinite blue, untouched by smog or satellites. A flat platform extended toward the ice shelf. She took it, stood at its edge. Beneath her, the southern ocean churned with patient power. A living engine. She closed her eyes, felt the wind comb through her hair, and stretched her arms wide, not in triumph, but in release. Behind her, distant voices carried from the domes. Laughter, questions, life. She turned back, walking toward the central hub, a glass passage lined with old posters and newer hand-drawn charts. Children's artwork now hung beside schematics, crayon suns beside hydrogen reactor plans. A boy ran past her, giggling as he shouted, "The sea sent us a seal again." She followed the sound. At the edge of the camp, a group had gathered near the observation dock. Sure enough, a plump seal blinked lazily at the onlookers, completely unbothered by humans. One of the biologists, a tall woman with tangled hair and seal tattoos, joked, "Third time this week. They're watching us as much as we watch them." Sasha knelt, met the seal's eyes. There was something ancient in them. Unimpressed, unafraid. "Looks like we passed inspection," she said softly. That afternoon, she joined a storytelling session in Dome 6. There were no chairs, only cushions on the floor, and blankets made from recycled fabric. A young leader named Marin shared tales of their grandmother escaping floodwaters in Manila. Another, Amina, told a story of hacking power grids in Nigeria to bring light to her neighborhood. When it came to Sasha's turn, she hesitated, then leaned forward, voice steady. "I once signed a deal I should not have signed. It brought us a fortune, but it cost a river its breath." Eyes widened. Even the seal tattoo woman paused in her tea pouring. "I returned the money, but the river did not return." That was the first time I understood that every signature is a fingerprint on the earth. No applause, just understanding. Later that evening, as solar lanterns lit up the snow with soft yellow halos, Sasha walked alone to the edge of the western ridge. She sat on a carved bench made from salvaged shipwood, its plaque read, "Dedicated to those who refuse comfort in favor of truth." Above, the aurora stirred. Colors danced in silence. Green, violet, rose gold. It was not a show. It was a conversation between sky and sun and magnetic breath. Sasha whispered, as if the lights could hear her, "I am done building. Now I will listen." And so she did, for hours. No thoughts of speeches, no strategies, no regrets. The next day, she woke early, dressed in warm layers, packed a bag herself, just a notebook, a solar pen, a scarf Anya had knitted for her. At breakfast, she sat with the youngest members of the colony, played games, let them braid her hair, told them the truth. "I will be leaving soon." "Where?" a boy asked. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can watch the world grow, without needing to shape it anymore." "Are you dying?" asked a girl with wide eyes. Sasha smiled. "No, but something else is. My time at the front." After the meal, she hugged them all, each one, not rushed, not obligatory. Then she found Elias, handed him a sealed envelope, thick, heavy with decisions. "My final fund. You and the council decide how it is used. I ask only one thing. Let it go to those who never asked to be saved, but chose to rise anyway." Elias took the envelope, not with solemnity, but with quiet pride. "Where will you go?" She pointed to the horizon. "There is a tiny island off the coast of Chile. One tree. No signal. A fisherman agreed to ferry me once a month for supplies." Elias laughed. "You're going off-grid?" She grinned. Finally, her ship departed as the sun crowned a colony in amber light. No send-off parade. No last-minute interviews. Just footprints in snow. She stood at the back of the vessel, watching Horizon Point shrink into the whiteness, not disappearing, just becoming part of the planet again. In her cabin, she unrolled a blank sheet of paper, wrote a single line. Asterisk, what happens when we stop needing heroes and become stewards instead? Asterisk, she folded the paper, placed it in a weatherproof capsule, and the next time the ship passed over deep water, She dropped it in, a message to the future, not demanding, not instructing, just witnessing. That night, as waves rocked the boat gently, Sasha dreamed of hands, not shaking, but lifting soil, lifting stone, lifting each other. And for the first time, she did not wake with urgency. She woke with peace, and knew her story had finally become a seed. Weeks passed. The world continued to turn, oblivious to the silent Sasha now lived within. The island welcomed her with no fanfare, just a gentle hiss of waves on dark rock, the whisper of wind through the single, towering fig tree, a few seabirds that paid her no mind. Her home was a small cabin, stone foundation, wood walls, built by the hands of a local family who had long since stopped asking why rich people sometimes came here to disappear. Inside, there was no power grid, no signal, just oil lamps, a kettle, and a writing desk made of driftwood. She spent her first morning clearing leaves from the steps, the first afternoon collecting rainwater, the first evening cooking rice over a small fire. She did not miss the noise. She missed nothing. Her world had narrowed, but her mind, it stretched further than it had in years. She began writing again, not memos, not plans, but letters, hundreds of them, each one addressed to a person she never met, to the refugee child learning to code by flashlight, to the old miner who plants trees where he once dug holes, to the farmer's daughter who refused to sell her land, to the corporate whistleblower who lost their job but not their spine. She wrote in long, looping strokes. She paused often, sometimes to think, sometimes to just breathe. Once a month, the fisherman came. Miguel, a quiet man with skin like sun-aged leather and a smile he rarely used. He brought her mail, supplies, fresh fruit, always left them by the tree, never intruded. But one day, he waited. She invited him to sit. They shared mangoes in silence. Eventually, Miguel spoke. "You are the woman from the news?" Sasha nodded. Once. He looked at her for a moment, then said, "My daughter used your solar plans. Lit up our whole village. Now they think she's magic." Sasha smiled. "She probably is." Miguel looked toward the horizon. "You staying here forever?" "Maybe not forever, but long enough for the world to forget me." He nodded, left a sealed package, then sailed away. Inside was a letter from Theo. No header, no signature, just words. They renamed the Accord anyway. "But we put your footnote on the plaque. Built by many, remembered by few." She placed a letter beside a stone on her windowsill. Let the wind age it. Did not respond. The days fell into rhythm. Tide in, tide out, bird song at dawn, silence by dusk. She grew vegetables, fished sparingly, made ink from charcoal and berries. Every letter she wrote, she buried in bottles under the fig tree, not to be found, just to release them. One morning, a storm hit. Rain slammed the roof like drum beats. Winds clawed at the windows. She lit every lamp, sat in the center of the room, listened to the fury. Her heart did not race. She did not feel small. She felt present, like the storm was not against her, just alive. When it passed, she walked barefoot across the wet grass, face tilted to the sun, mud between her toes, and she laughed, a full laugh, the kind that bends your spine backward and shudders through your ribs, the kind she had not known since she was a girl in her grandmother's kitchen, chasing a dog that stole a fish. She was not lonely, because solitude is not the same as emptiness. She was not afraid, because fear had no fuel here. She was not forgotten, because she no longer needed to be remembered. One evening, she found a broken bird, wing clipped by wind or wire. She fed it, wrapped it, sang to it. It stayed 3 weeks, then flew. She watched it go with joy, not grief. Seasons shifted. The fig tree bore fruit, then dropped its leaves, then bloomed again. Years passed this way, and then one day, a stranger arrived. A young woman, tall, sharp-eyed, dressed plainly, but moved with purpose. She introduced herself only as Kai. "I found your letters," she said. 3 of them, actually. Was not supposed to. But something told me to dig near the tree. Sasha said nothing. Kai stepped forward. You wrote one to a refugee coder. That was me. Sasha nodded. I hoped someone would read it. Kai reached into her coat, pulled out a thin black tablet. Solar-powered. Hand-assembled. This runs on a new OS. Built from the principles in your letter. Decentralized, local first, no tracking. We call it Drift, after your signature. Sasha touched the device gently. It was warm from sunlight. I came to say thank you, Kai said, but also to ask something. Sasha looked up, waiting. Will you come back? Not to lead, not to fix, just to teach. Just to remind us what the beginning felt like. Sasha stared at the sea for a long time, then said, I will come for a season, and then return to the quiet. Kai smiled. That is enough. They stayed the night, shared soup, laughed, watched stars that pulsed like breathing lungs in the sky. In the morning, they left together. Sasha took nothing with her, left the cabin unlocked, left her name scratched on a stone beside the fig tree. It reads simply, I rested here. And as the boat moved away, the island remained still, untouched, unclaimed, waiting for the next tired soul to write again, in silence. Years later, the island was quiet again. Waves still folded gently along the shore. The fig tree had grown taller, its branches stretching like arms to the sky. Its roots gripped the earth, anchored in wisdom, in memory. No one lived there now, not permanently, but every few months, someone would come, a teacher, a builder, a child, an elder with questions. They would stay for a while, sleep in the cabin, tend the soil, listen to the wind, and when they left, they would leave behind a letter, buried beneath the fig tree, wrapped in care, unaddressed, but never unread. Far away, in cities stitched with cables and sun, the drift system had taken root, not a product, not a brand, a philosophy, a way of living, that asked less from the earth, and gave more to each other. Sasha had returned once. Briefly, she spoke only twice, both times to children. The first time, she knelt beside a girl with bright eyes. The girl asked, Why did you leave everything behind? Sasha answered, I did not leave it. I gave it room to grow. The second time, a boy asked, Were you afraid of being forgotten? She smiled. Not at all. The ocean forgets every boat that crosses it, but it remembers how to carry them. And that was enough. She disappeared again soon after. Some say she returned to the island. Others believe she found an even quieter place, somewhere beyond maps. No one knows for sure. But every so often, on certain warm evenings, when the sea is calm and the fig tree's leaves rustle just right, it is said you can hear her voice, not speaking, but humming, a low, steady melody, like a tide returning, like a legacy that never asked to be noticed, only honored. And beneath that tree, among the buried letters, one stone now reads, Here stood a woman who chose peace over power, and left the world stronger for it. That is how the story ends. Not in headlines, not in monuments, but in quiet hands, planting something for someone they may never meet. And in that, the world learned to begin again.